So I was looking through some of my old footage and I realized that I actually did go back to play Batman Arkham City, but not necessarily Arkham City, but the Arkham City that is in the Return to Arkham series. Now, this was a 30 FPS rendition that made me go, ugh, I can't believe I'm playing. I'm just joking, folks. I'm playing. I'm not here to bash on the frame rate. If anything, I'm here to talk about a few things that Batman Arkham City did very well. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. And let's jump right in. Arkham City is one of my favorite games of all time. Yes, I like Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight, and it is a very big challenge for me to figure out which of the Arkham games I like the most. But for some strange reason, I guess sometimes it lends to itself what season we're in and how I actually do feel when I'm playing, or want to play these games or replay them. So with Arkham City, on the other hand, I found myself in a position where I had first played the game for the very first time years back when I was in college. Some friends had a PlayStation 3. They had it just sitting there and they had this game and I just put it in and I started playing. And I thought to myself, I can't believe this is actually a Batman game that's being made right now in front of me. Huge Batman fan all my life. Never had I played a Batman game. I was all about the animated series, and so that's what I was stuck with. But seeing this particular game in my hand was a shock. Imagine coming from the animated series. I'm talking about the old animated series, okay? The one that starts with da 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 da. I mean, that was the one I watched. Kevin Conroy and all the other, really cool actors. And it really did warp my mind. I had detective vision. I could actually take down bad guys with stealth. I had like all these cool gadgets and I got to see Mr. Freeze. So all of this was actually pretty cool. Well, fast forward a few years down the road, I got myself an Xbox 360. I got the game and I was playing it, but I never necessarily beat it at that time. It wasn't until later, then I went ahead and just decided, you know what? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to play this game on PC, and I beat the game on PC. Fun experience. I really did enjoy that experience because it was in 60 frames per second. So I wanted to go ahead and start working on 100%ing the game. I was like, this is one of my favorite games, as well as Arkham Knight and Arkham, Origins, which is really big for me. And note that I'm not mentioning Arkham Asylum. Some of you are probably having a question mark saying, whoa, where's Arkham Asylum? I haven't beaten it yet, guys. Forgive me. I've been busy playing the other ones over and over again. It's kind of really weird. And so I went with that premise and I said, you know what, let me try and 100% it, only to find out that some of the Steam support had changed. So the controller system and the mechanics were actually quite different. And I thought to myself, oh no, this is bad. I can't play this game because every time I try to use a controller, the controls were all warped out. So I got antsy, and one Christmas, I got myself a present. And this is it right here. Me playing Batman Return to Arkham on my PlayStation 4. Now, this was a really cool experience because I just didn't even care about the frame rate. For some people, they say, oh, when I play a game at 60 FPS and go back, to 30 FPS, it's actually quite challenging to do. It wasn't the case for me. It was just an enjoyable game. So why did I like this game? What was so good about Arkham City that made me get to a point where I just felt I needed to keep playing this game? And I still do play the game till date. Well, the very first thing is Arkham City was quite revolutionary. It was coming from Arkham Asylum, which I had actually seen and experienced at some point, but it really did change the mold. The way the game was rendered for a city at night with all of the little, clues and the huge transformation to showcase that you were in a weird claustrophobic city that you had to pretty much do things to to basically overturn the strange holes that was on top of this city. I mean, isn't that crazy that this particular game was pretty much the successor of Arkham Asylum, and it actually basically did a lot of things that Arkham Asylum did. It rendered in a better way. They even added a secondary protagonist for you, which was Catwoman, which was actually pretty nice. And so that was a really cool aspect. And I couldn't help but wonder, though, there were aspects of the conversations that I thought were kind of weird because, I didn't play Arkham Asylum. So for me to see some of the relationships kind of go awry, like, Catwoman's really strange relationship with, Poison Ivy and all of that, I was thinking to myself, well, what's going on here? There might be some level of animosity that had actually occurred in the previous game, but I still didn't care. The current game that was in my hand was just that good. I just kept playing it. And I think you can basically chalk that up to game mechanics and a lot of the really smooth aspects of the game in terms of combat. And so this is something else that it did well. Imagine playing a game and you're in a position where you're like, man, I got to go back and play the old one. But you know what? I'm not going to go back and play the old one because I'm having so much fun playing the current one that's in my hands. I think it's something to speak for itself, even though the story may have been a little vague. But for someone who had been watching the animated series, it wasn't too hard to piece the puzzles together. And so that was another really cool thing. The developers were able to write a story that was open-ended enough that didn't keep you confused, regardless of where you picked the game up from. And this was a very, very interesting thing. Now, I think Arkham Knight at that point was able to do a little less of the open-endedness and make their story more narrow focused. And this was actually pretty good. If you kind of think about it, they wanted to focus on a villain that was basically from somewhere else, and they did a very good job in representing all of that. So that was something that was pretty cool. In the case of Arkham City, nonetheless, I think they really did a very, very good job in keeping that comical aspect for the old generation. This was a game designed for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and it did a very, very wonderful job in keeping those things that were kind of remarkable for what a comic book fan or even somebody coming from the animated series would have loved to see in a video game. Rocksteady really nailed it. They really knocked it out of the park with this particular game. A few other things that were quite interesting as well, and I think this one is of huge significance, is the way that you were able to traverse within really small spaces as Batman. You could pretty much just, they set you up so well in some of the levels, like the GCPD building, where you could go in, you could glide, you could run around, you could set up shop, and you could run missions in a stealth way that gave you the upper hand. This was a really cool aspect to me, and it is actually quite showcased very well, by the way, in Arkham Origins. So Warner Brothers Games Montreal did a good job to actually continue that tradition. I'm not just leaving it to Arkham City as the only game or development to benefit from this. I think there was something to write home about in terms of how, you could pretty much, call this as something that they picked up and they saw as a good working aspect, and they leveraged it very well. So this is something that I think for sure we would love to see, say, in the next game that is a Batman themed game, which is Gotham Knights. I hope that Gotham Knights can actually learn some of these wonderful, wonderful lessons that Arkham City actually put forth for everyone. Because yes, even though Arkham Asylum may have been the progenitor in a sense, I think Arkham City was the one that made the game kind of bigger. And so if you want to follow a game that made things bigger, simple, and better, let's not forget better, I think the blueprint to follow is Arkham City's blueprint, because that was the same blueprint that Arkham Origins followed. And Warner Brothers Montreal were wise to follow that blueprint, even though they were trying to tell a story that still kind of worked with Arkham City in a sense. So these are just some of the things that I feel like made Arkham City a very huge game for me and an impactful one. There are a lot of things that I feel like this game did well. I could sit here for hours just talking about how I feel the game is kind of a landmark game. But at the end of the day, I made this video because I believe strongly, and I do believe strongly, that the Gotham Knights game really needs to take some notes from what they've been able to achieve. Because, at the end of the day, if you kind of think about it, this game is trying to reach some level of the standard that already has been set by previous games. And it's going to be big shoes to fill. So what the best play to me is like I said, to follow the blueprint that really does highlight what this particular, these old games have already been able to achieve. They are going to be setting the game in Gotham City, which is actually slightly different in terms of setting. But at the end of the day, there are aspects that they want to kind of highlight. We're already seeing glimpses of that. And I know in previous, reveals and trailers, we got to see, say, layers of the Court of Owls, the layer of the Court of Owls and all of that. This is going to provide a secondary dimension, and I feel this is where they can actually shine in their own original concept, because these kinds of layers, like the ones we saw in the reveal from the DC Fandom event in October, those are not necessarily available too much in Arkham City. You have the underground and all of that, but, I don't know how they're going to tell the story. Maybe they will use the underground train station type of methodology and type of archetype in terms of level design to actually pull that off. who knows? I mean, I see a lot of glimpses and similarities, anyways, between Gotham Knights and Batman Arkham City. Many people may not necessarily, see them, but I guess we can start pointing them out as time goes on. But, anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Talk to me. Do you think that Arkham City has the potential to influence Gotham Knights in a very huge way? Let me know your thoughts. We'll talk later. Peace out.